All right. I've just admitted all, so hopefully people are able to come online. If obviously I can't see everyone because there are a lot of people on this call, but if people can just say thumbs up that you can hear me, just visually, can everyone hear me? Very good. Okay, hi, welcome. I'm Alan Barton, and behind me here, this is the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And normally these seats are full with classes and rehearsals and people rehearsing plays and reading scripts and producing plays and doing plays and performing plays. And of course, none of that is happening because we're all stuck in this ridiculous situation. So at the school, what we did was started to do some online classes via the Zoom platform where we just talked about various aspects of what we teach here at the school and making lemonade, of course, out of this situation. And we realized that there's actually a fair amount of value, not only just for the students to be able to see each other and see each other's faces during this crazy time, but also to be able to focus in on various aspects of, oh, sorry, I'm admitting people as we go. But also being able to focus in on various aspects of the teaching that we talk about. We're a scene study outfit here at the Playhouse, and scene study means it's a masterclass format where people perform scenes for a critique. So we don't normally have time in class to spend a lot of time on the basics of the approach, how to think about being an actor. And as we were doing these lectures over the last 3 weeks, we thought, well, there are a lot of actors out there who are probably stuck at home thinking about what the heck to do when all this ends, and thinking maybe more in a focused way about what it is they want to do as an actor, how to pursue it. And so I thought I would offer this session here to lay out how to think about being an actor and what it is exactly you are selling when you say you're going to be an actor. What's the commodity? What's the skill you're actually selling? Because it's remarkable how few actors really know. I'm going to switch glasses here so I can see all of you a little better. So what are you selling when you say you want to become an actor? How do you pursue it? What are you chasing? What are you actually, what is the skill you're selling? When you're going to be a violinist, whether you're going to be a plumber, there's a very specific skill that you are offering. And so it's easy to see in other fields what it is you're developing. It doesn't matter what field you're doing. Again, I always use plumbing, being a plumber as a nice, good blue collar tradesman sort of metaphor for pursuing acting, because a lot of pursuing acting can be looked at in that same way. And a lot of actors don't know how to think about it. I think most actors think what they're selling is truth. They're selling some sense of internal honesty. And that can be an aspect of what you're selling. But I thought I'd cover in sort of a broad stroke here what it is you're selling, how to think about this process of becoming an actor, professional actor. And along the way, you can type in questions into the chat, and then one of the people who works here at the school, who handles incoming applicants to the school, she'll field those questions, and at some point I'll say, okay, Cameron, what questions do we have? Or maybe I'll be able to read it myself. But again, with the numbers here, we might have someone filtering through all that stuff. So what are you selling when you say you want to become an actor? Well, there's basically 3 skills that you need. First and foremost is how the heck to act. You know, obviously people go like, well, I need to know how to act, but what is that? And again, that's where I go to earlier when people sometimes think, well, I'm selling truth, I'm selling honesty, I'm selling my own soul, my own heart, my own pain, etc. And I like to think of it a little bit differently. What you're selling is the ability to make this story, this script, whatever it is, short film, play, movie, TV, whatever it is, you're selling the temporary notion that this thing is real. People know that when they watch acting, it's not real. They don't want to know that it's real. I often use the metaphor of an amusement park ride. You know, we all, whether it's the field of entertainment or whether you go to an amusement park, you're paying money to go into a closed environment, a dark environment, Star Tours, what have you, and you want to go on a ride. And there's no difference in that in walking into a movie theater or walking into a straight theater. you want to take the audience on a ride, and the audience knows that they're on a ride. And it's sort of I sometimes use a very stark example here. You know, snuff films are a horrific crime for which people would go to jail for a long, long time. Horror movies are a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Why? Because people know it's not real, but they love the ride. They love the ride. And what you're doing is you're taking them on that ride. And what you're selling as an actor is the ability to take a script that's in front of you and make it seem as though it's happening for the audience in that time. That does not necessarily mean that you are going through that experience yourself, although that is an aspect of acting training and sort of philosophies of acting that can be popular, that you go through it yourself literally. But what you really are is a magician. You're pulling a quarter out of a kid's ear. And when a magician does that well and entertains your kid, you're like, oh my God, this guy is so entertaining, so wonderful. But if that magician turned and said to you, no, I actually pulled a quarter out of your daughter's ear, it was actually in there, you'd say, you're freaking nuts. You're crazy, get away from me. So you're a magician, and people know it's magic. People want the magic, and that's part of what you're selling when you're acting, is simply the ability to make this story come to life in a temporary form for the audience to enjoy it. And it is the audience that matters. You don't matter. None of this is about you. There's a chapter in my book about this, and the first sentence is, none of this is actually about you. It's about your abilities to sell a story. And so all of the acting technique that we teach here, or that I would hope is taught elsewhere, stems from that simple truth that you are selling a story. You are a storytelling professional. So if you look at a movie, that process starts with a blank page and a writer with an idea. And if the idea is good enough and the writer's connected, etc., it will attract money. It will attract, the financing. It'll attract producers. It'll attract a director. It'll attract, all these people will come onto the process, and they're all interested in telling this story. Designers, everybody, they're all interested in telling this story in a compelling way that'll entertain the audience. And you are part of that machine, but you're just a part of that machine. And once you understand that you're just that part, you're just the, not the character. I'm talking about the function. Your function is to help all of those people tell that story. You will start placing acting, I think, in the correct context, because actors can be notoriously narcissistic, to put a word, self-interested. They go into themselves, and because 95% of even a successful actor, 95% of that person's life is spent outside the frame of action and cut, outside of hearing a stage manager say, okay, places, we're ready to go. The actor will tend to interiorize and think and contemplate and theorize and diagnose problems within themselves, and they lose sense of context. And the context is you're there to help tell a story. We all got into this playing cops and robbers as kids, doing the kids' plays, entertaining, getting a response from an audience, whether it was just our family to start with, friends at school, and you got that sense of feedback, like they're entertained, they enjoy this. And that's what started this whole process. That's why we all got into this, is that sense of fun in telling a story. And so our approach here at the Beverly Hills Playhouse is largely geared towards how do you help tell this particular story? There are lots of different stories. If you watch TV, there are tons of different styles. There's stuff that's more vivid. There's stuff that's very naturalistic, network TV. The history of TV is it's an advertising platform. And so network TV in particular was designed for people to be able to watch and be somewhat entertained while they sell soap during the commercials. And you got to understand that that's where you fit. And all of that there's a ton of work to be had as an actor that is short of something that you would attribute to geniuses like Brando or Streep or Daniel Day-Lewis, or people that we really look up to and admire for their incredible detail and their incredible involvement in the story. There's a ton of content out there that requires professional actors who know what they're doing on that particular job. So you'll notice that on network TV, a lot of the acting is very naturalistic. The people you see acting there, if you see them on the talk shows at night, they're essentially the same. They look the same, they talk the same, they got the same vibe, and there's not necessarily particularly anything fancy about the acting they are doing for that network TV show. A lot of network TV shows are what I call sort of coffee shop naturalism, walk and talk acting. The cop procedurals, procedurals are all about procedure. They're all about the way those stories are laid out. They're laid out the same. Law and Order is the same story, night in, night out, thousands of episodes. And so you got to know what you're part of there, and how much throttle do you give your acting in relation to this particular story. If you've got a 5 and under on a naturalistic cop TV show, and you're playing a coffee barista, there's not a lot of acting you're going to do. There's not a lot of choices you're going to make. You're just realistically being that person serving up coffee to the leads. There are other things that you'll get, plays, with certain writers where you'll get to open up that throttle on your acting and really get emotionally involved and really get into it, as we say. And that would be appropriate for those things. But a lot of actors think there's only one kind of acting that solves all acting equations across the story spectrum. And it is my pain, my truth, my this, my that, and I consider that to be not necessarily incorrect, because again, being personally involved in the story that you're acting can be a good thing. It can help tell that story, but it's not the only thing. And so when you're selling yourself as an actor, part of what you want to think about is you're selling your ability to assess this story, the style of this story, and to walk into a room and audition, hopefully, and do what they have in mind. And sometimes for a play, that's going to be very rich, very emotional. And for a 5 and under, it's going to be something else. And you got to be able to know where to place your shot. Sometimes I'll use athletic metaphors. I like to play tennis. Not every shot in tennis is just this smashing, unbelievable forehand that wins the point. Sometimes you're just moving the ball around. You're figuring out where it is. Not every shot is everything that you've got. But with actors, most actors will tell you they wish they had more auditions. They'll finally get an audition. It's the one audition they had that month. They'll do more acting in that audition. They'll do 10 times the acting required for that part in the one audition, because it's just like, oh my God, I've got this one chance to prove myself, to get this job, and they will overact. They will simply overact for that setting, for this 5 and under on a cop procedural. They'll go in and just act the crap out of it. And then you'll get that feedback. Do less. Do less. Just read it. Just be yourself. Water or gin, but it's in a water bottle. So when you think about acting, you want to think about that context. And a lot of what we try to do at the school here is to apply context to this entire journey. So acting can be a very serious thing. It can be something that can be looked at as a very high art form. But a lot of the times, you're just selling that story. It's no different from Cops and Robbers when you were a kid. It's no different from telling a story when you were a kid and entertaining the audience. And you would emphasize, you would lie, you would exaggerate certain elements for the purposes of telling the story to get a certain response. And we're doing the same thing in acting. So that is number one in terms of what you're doing when you think about acting, is that it is not about you. It is about your ability to sell a particular story to affect the audience and draw them into that temporary reality that they want to go on for 2 hours. They want to be entertained. They want to laugh, cry, be scared out of their mind in a horror movie, what have you. And there are ways that the stories do that. And then you come in on as the actor. You've got your 1 day of shooting. And there's this huge machine that has been in the process of making this story for a year or more. And you walk in and you're there to fulfill this function in this scene. And so that is the main thing I would say. There's a ton to get into about the specifics of acting. And if people have those questions, I can answer those questions about process. But the main thing is you are there to sell a story. And you got to know what that story is and how the story is designed to have the effect on the audience. And you may be able to do that while faking it. You may be able to do that while really living it, really experiencing the emotions. The bottom line is, does the audience in this period of time that the story exists, do they believe what you are trying to do? And sometimes that does not mean you have to literally go through it. It's one of the big misconceptions about acting, is that all acting involves you going through it. And it's not. It's you selling it. It's you selling it. And I often, using the plumbing metaphor, if you call a plumber, you got a leak in your sink, you don't care if the plumber likes his job, doesn't like his job, whether they feel they're in or they're out. Did they feel that there was a fourth wall? Did they feel connected? Did they feel not connected? Were they depressed that day? Do they think that this career is for them? You don't care about any of that stuff. You just want them to fix the leak. As an actor, you're fixing a leak in the story. You're fixing something that needs to be there. There needs to be a barista serving up a coffee to the lead. Do that. And if you know that you're doing that in that story, and then over here you're playing a bad guy, and the bad guys, if you notice on network TV in general, bad guys that get to do a lot more acting. They get to twirl the mustache and be way more interesting and more compelling as characters. And the leads, because they're leads and they're there scene after scene, episode after episode, the acting is not so much. They're consistent. They're representing a certain part. They're representing a certain kind of guy, a certain kind of woman who's a detective or whatever it is, doctor, what have you. So you'll notice that the leads generally don't have a ton of acting to do. There might be one scene, there might be something where it's emotional. And but with cop procedurals, the bad guys always get to do more. The patients, the guest star patient who's dying of cancer, they get to do a ton of acting and get emotional and be with their family, and the tears are flowing, and the leads generally are not. So once you start to look at stories and how they're told, you'll be able to place your acting in the proper context to be more effective in an audition. Because again, the number one piece of feedback that actors will hear, particularly in LA, is don't do so much. Stop doing so much. Just read it. Just be. Just exist. And they're not necessarily wrong for saying that. They're looking for a particular kind of style that serves the story that they're casting. And then if you go in for a big play at a big theater and you do coffee shop naturalism, walk and talk, they're going to be like, where's the story? Come on, this is Arthur Miller. This is John Patrick Shanley. This is Tennessee Williams. There's passion, there's poetry, and you got to know when to dial it up, when to open up the throttle. I use that metaphor a lot. When do you open up the throttle on this car and really drive it? Just because you're a Ferrari doesn't mean that in red light traffic going through LA, you're flooring it, doing 80 miles an hour from red light to red light. You're going to be a menace. And a lot of actors are a driving menace because they don't know where to place the acting in relation to the story. So that's the number one thing about acting. And again, as we go, if you have questions more about specifics of acting, obviously I'll be happy to answer those. But that's the number one skill you're selling. Number two, there are basically three things you're selling. Number two is you are the administrator of your own business. The business is you have this product. The product is, hey, I'm good at selling stories. I am not afraid of being in front of people. You can give me a script and I'll learn those lines and I can say those lines in a pretty natural way as if someone is speaking them. 95% of humanity gets nervous speaking in front of people. They get nervous with being given a script and having to learn things. They sound wooden. They don't know how to do it. They're freaked out, and that's why they sell insurance. That's what they should be doing. You're one of the few people who are like, I like being in front of people and entertaining. So when you think about what you're selling, you are selling you have that skill and you're marketing that skill and you're running a business where you're trying to get that product out. The product essentially is you as a storytelling professional. And that business needs to be run. It needs to be administered. It needs to be, attention must be paid to it. And so a lot of actors are way, 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 way too passive about this part of the business, which is that you are running a business. And the business is, I'm a professional storyteller, hire me to help tell your story. And so that's what we call administration. That's our lexicon for it at the school is, the standard question a teacher will ask a student is, what are you doing about your administration? Because most actors are like, I need an agent, and when I get an agent, they'll get me out. If I get out enough, I'll book a job. And that is a very small part of how professional work is actually gotten. Most jobs that I've found that aspiring actors get, they're essentially getting on their own, and the agent happens to be taking the phone call. So you are working the development of contacts, the relationships with casting people, the relationships with, yes, agents and managers, the relationships with producers, writers, A lot of famous people that you know have had existing collaborations between writers, directors, and actors that have gone on since college, since very young. They trust each other, they work with each other again and again and again. And what you're trying to do is build a network that will serve you in that way. But actors are way too passive about this. They think, I just need an agent. If I get an agent, they'll get me out. If I get out, I'll get a job. That's true, but on a very small scale. And so as an actor, part of what you have to do is run the business. You're hanging a shingle outside your door that says storytelling professional. I like to sort of use that instead of actor, because acting starts to get into all this stuff, technique and blah, 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 and myself and myself and a thing and blah, 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 blah. The shingle you're selling is storytelling professional. Just like the designers, just like the directors and the producers and the writers, you are one of them. You help sell stories. And then you've got to go like, okay, I've hung this shingle. Picture yourself with a storefront. I found a shingle, storytelling professional. How do people find you? How do people know you exist? To buy your services, to evaluate your services, to see if they want you. Well, that is an active process. And in my book that I wrote for the students here, which is called The Oasis of Insanity, I talk about what I call the 3 phases that an actor goes through professionally. Phase 1 is essentially the 1 to 5 years after you land in a major city where you think you want to pursue this. Traditionally, that's been New York or Los Angeles. Over the last 10, 15 years, you're all probably aware, there's New Orleans, there's Atlanta, there's a lot of places where productions go. There's Vancouver, and there's a lot of places where, because of tax reasons, because of other labor costs, because of a number of reasons, they have become production centers. So phase 1 is 1 to 5 years after you land in one of those areas. We're sitting here in Los Angeles. And most actors who land in Los Angeles, there's a period of adjustment. And that's true for whatever city, where you're like, I gotta get a place to live, and do I need a car, and who's my roommate, and do I have any money to pay the damn rent, and then I gotta find a class, and I gotta do this, you know, and it takes a while to get yourself acclimated to the environment. And for young actors in particular, there are a ton of bad choices along that for phase 1. The bad choices being usually bad boyfriends and girlfriends, bad habits with drinking and the usage of recreational drugs, including pot, even though it's legal. It does, I'll get on my high horse and say, it's not helping you the way you think it is. There's no one who we know who we go like, oh man, he smokes so much pot and he's so effective. I mean, he's just like eating it up, man. He's the most aggressive, ambitious person in the world. He does pot every day. These are not the things we think of. So the early phase there, phase 1, is you're in the city. You know you want to be an actor. You may or may not be in a class. You may or may not even know you need a class to learn how to do what I talked about in part 1 about acting. You have a shitty job that you may or may not like. You may be short on cash. You've got a shitty roommate and or shitty boyfriend or girlfriend problems that distract you and take up a ton of attention. Bad friends who are, you know, not up to things that will help you. And so part of what we talk about in phase 1 is that you've got to create a world around you that supports what you do and makes you feel good about what you're doing. If you have a friend who doesn't make you feel good about what you are doing, then you got to evaluate how much time you're going to spend with that person. And these are tough decisions when you're young, because you think, well, every friend is deserving of my time and attention and my loyalty. But if you're going to do this, if you're going to pursue acting, which is a challenging career, there's no roadmap like being a lawyer where you go to law school. And if you want to do public advocacy, you go there. If you want to do corporate, you go there. You do 7 years, you become partner. There's a certain ladder you climb, and you can do it kind of robotically day after day. Acting is something you have to think about and nudge and force into existence every day. And if you have friends around you who are, why do you want to do that? Well, and that includes a lot of times family. Family gets into a very tricky situation. Why do you want to do that when you were so talented? You can become a lawyer, you can join the firm, you can join dad's business. Why aren't you like your brother who's successful, who went to med school? We always dreamed of you becoming a doctor, blah, blah, blah. The cliches there's like 1,000 of them. That's something you've got to be able to handle. so that you can function without negative influence. If day to day you can contemplate acting and you talk to someone, you go like, I think I want to, and the response is, what the hell do you want to do that for? That's crazy. Why do you want to throw away your life? Blah, blah, blah. You want to start evaluating how much time you spend with those people. None of this is about, you know, throwing down the gauntlet and saying, this is over, I'm not going to speak to you, mom, blah, blah, blah. You may end up getting there at some time. But mostly I'm talking about this phase one of setting up a life in the city you have chosen that supports this business, this storefront, which has the shingle, storytelling professional. And if you've got people throwing rocks through your window and barring the door and coming into your shop and saying, what do you want to open this shop for? It's stupid. You would want to get rid of those people. So this phase one involves a lot of chaos in my experience. There's just a lot of noise, a lot of chaos, a lot of distraction, and a lot of bad habits, and a lot of not even really knowing how to chase acting as a craft specifically. And then you start to realize, oh, the craft specifically isn't going to be the one thing that helps me become an actor. I'm going to have to run this business. These things start to happen in this 1 to 5 years. Phase two involves a decision. The decision is at some point, and it can happen fast. There are some people who come to the LA and they get this. And there are people who come to it after a certain period of time. The decision is, this is harder than I thought. And I think I'm going to need to make some changes. And I think I'm going to have to really get more serious about this overall. I need a class that is more challenging. I need a better agent. I need to get rid of this roommate who drives me nuts, girlfriend, boyfriend who drives me nuts. I need, you know, it's a decision where you say, I'm going to have to take this more seriously. And everyone gets there at some point, because none of this, you know, there are very few people. If you want to find an actor and you say, you know, hey, it was crazy, he landed in LA, his first audition was a series regular, he booked it, and he's famous. You can come up with those stories if you want, but they're not teachable. That's just winning the lottery. And it's unlikely you're going to win the lottery. So phase two is this decision. I need to be more serious about this. And anyone who chases any career has that decision of, I'm going to be serious about this. For a doctor, it's, I want to do it. I'm going to go to med school. I'm going to dedicate 4 years of my life and spend a certain amount of money to become trained to do this. And doctors have 10 years, a lot of them, of training. And it's not just med school, because then you hit residency and blah, 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 blah. Lawyers, 3 years, plus slave labor in some law firm where you're the photocopier in chief on your way to getting cases, et cetera. You want to be a school teacher, you got to get an education degree, and then you go an apprentice, and then you're a sub, and that, you know, every career, I don't care what career it is, electrician, plumber, carpenter, cook, anything you want to name. There is a moment where they go, I'm going to be serious about this, and I'm going to get myself trained in this field. And that means I'm going to shut off other things in my life. And people who don't support that are going to be minimized. And I'm going to take a certain amount of time each week. And it's so much easier with some of these other places, because med school, that's your whole life. Once you sign up for med school and get in, shit, your whole day is structured for 4 years minimum. Same with law school, same with other things. There's this program that you go through to get trained and get ready to do what you want to do. And acting is very tricky, because there are conservatories, undergraduate conservatories, and there are graduate ones, Yale and Juilliard, et cetera. But then the structure runs out after a certain time. And it's just you out there in the world needing to make some money. On the way to making money, there's no apprenticeship for acting. You got to go and earn some jobs. And so this phase two involves that decision that if you were going to be a doctor was made, maybe even in college, to I'm going to focus on pre-med, and then I'm going to apply to med schools and get in. Ditto with lawyers or what have you. And some people get out of college, they don't know what they're doing, and they go, you know what, I'm going to join the FBI. And they apply and they get serious and they make the grade and they go to Quantico and they get trained. So acting is the same, it just has the illusion that it's different. The illusion is, I can just sort of exist, man. I'm here in LA and I'm here in New York and I got a job and it'll happen. And it doesn't. It doesn't just happen. For most people, it doesn't just happen. It is forced into existence through diligence and work. and building a network of storytelling professionals who will hire you, who will write for you, who talk to you about their projects. And you're able to say like, oh, wow, can I read that script? Is, you know, the classic actor's line, is there a part for me in that script? And you learn to do that in an artful way that people don't, you know, you don't drive people nuts. You know, is there a part for me? Is there a part for me? Hey, is there a part for me? Is there a part for me? You know, you want to do it. You'll develop a way of doing that in a way that's cool, that people like you. So phase 2 involves what I call build out. So phase 1 was, let's call it chaos. I call it prologue, but it's just the chaos of landing in the city and getting yourself acclimated, hopefully getting into a class. Hopefully it's a good one that challenges you. Phase 2 is, I got to get fucking serious about this, pardon my language, but I'm going to take the class more seriously. I'm going to work harder at it. I'm going to look at what I need to get a better agent. A lot of that involves what used to be called the reel, R-E-E-L, back when film was on reels, but it's still used, which is, what's the tape? What footage do you have of yourself acting? You want to get that in shape. You want to figure out what's going to be on that. A lot of people shoot their own stuff for their reel now, and that's totally fine. You can wait for jobs and get student films, etc. Or you can also shoot specifically, you know, and I'm a fan of saying, listen, if you want to do that, get 45 seconds of a really good scene and just shoot that. All you need is 45 seconds for a clip on your reel, 45 seconds to 90 seconds of really good acting per scene. You can do that. So you start to focus on getting that done and having it look really good. And more focus on what kind of agents and who are the agents in town and how do you get a better one. And that's a process on its own that never ends, by the way. You read the trades, top people in this town are switching agents right, left, and center. So it's not like you become hugely successful and you're like, oh, I got an agent, it's cool, they do everything for me. If you do, you're very lucky. But a lot of people are changing agents all the way along. So that's what I call phase 2, which is build out. And this is, get this, another 1 to 5 years. So you add this up on the long frame on both of these, 5 years of prologue to get your shit together after landing in a city, and up to 5 years of building out a network of people who trust you, where you start to go in. The auditions now are like several months. You know, my thing is that 50 auditions a year for decent stuff. And I'm not talking commercials. Commercials are like their own thing. If people have questions about that, I'll answer it. But I'm talking 50 auditions a year for theater or film or TV, the thing that you're interested in. When you get up to 50 a year, you're playing the game. You're really playing the game because it's a numbers game. You're not going to get most of those. But if you booked 10 of the 50, it's 20%, that's 10 jobs a year. You would start to feel like, hey, I'm making my living here as an actor. I've got some paychecks. So you add those up on the long scale, the 5 years for each of that, that's 10 years to build out a career. Now, you say, holy shit, 10 years, man. I just thought I'd move to LA and start booking work. That may happen. I'm talking about 10 years to build a network that supports and gives you opportunities where you would get to the point that most people define as a professional actor, which is, I don't have to work in a restaurant. I don't have to do temp work. I don't have to do Instacart. I don't have to do any of the number Uber or Lyft. I make my money from acting. I get paychecks that pay my rent. And that's the thing we're all working for. And those two phases of sort of chaos and getting yourself settled and getting yourself to eliminate a lot of bad habits. And then you get phase 2, which is now I'm a diligent worker and I'm really working at building out my skills and the marketing of those skills and building a network of people who can help bring me in. That can be up to 10 years before you're cooking as an actor. And guess what? That 10 years is the same 10 years for doctors, teachers, anything. Most people in any career, if you've done it for less than 10 years, they'll be like, yeah, whatever. Talk to me when you've really put in the miles. So you got to put the miles in on the odometer, and you got to put in the effort and the daily work. The trick about acting is, like I said, with med school, law school, the other, you know, your schedule is given to you by the people who are training you, and they own your life. With acting, very few people own your life. You have to do it. You have to put yourself through school. And even a good acting class, like we consider ourselves a really good acting class. It's twice a week, 4 hours a session. Okay, so that's 8 hours a week. You're rehearsing scenes outside of class. Let's say it's another 8 hours a week. There you're up to 16. But most people are pursuing a career and they pursue it 40 hours a week. What are you doing with that 40? Are you reading plays? Are you getting knowledgeable? The number of actors who don't read is astonishing. Professional actors who've never heard of Arthur Miller, who've never, you wouldn't think of that, and a lot of times when I'm training actors, I'll say, okay, let's stop talking about acting. Let's just say you're trying to become a violinist or a pianist. What would you do? And they'd be like, oh my God, 10,000 hours, 20,000 hours, practice, diligence. And you would never meet a pianist who said, Chopin, who's that? I don't know who Chopin is. I've never really played Beethoven. I'm not into Beethoven. I'm just into pop stuff. The training is significant, it's strenuous, and it's serious business. And the number of actors who don't even know the field they're in, the history of the field, who created it, who are the writers, who are the actors over the last 100 years, much less even the past 20 years. They don't know, and they don't read. They don't read plays because like, well, I want to do film or TV. But I'm telling you, if you want to do film and TV, shooting out of sequence and trying to keep track of story and stuff, there's no better training than reading plays and doing them and studying them. So you learn how to control time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time on stage. So phase 2 involves all of that. Getting serious. What are you doing with 40 hours a week that if you were a doctor, that 40 hours would be accounted for? It would be given to you. You know what to do. As an actor, you have to figure out what you're going to be doing for those 40 hours. And it's tough because some of those hours are spent working in a restaurant so you can pay your rent, etc. That's phase 2. Phase 3 is what I call I'm working here. And that's what I'm talking about that's the moment when you probably can give up your day job because the paychecks from acting are enough. And this is what everyone is going for. And it's hard to get there. But once you're there, guess what? The work doesn't stop because you got to keep that going. And you got to keep connections and you got to behave well and you got to maintain those connections and check in with directors you've worked for before, check in with writers, check in with the agents. And we did one of our in-house lectures a week ago or 2 weeks ago with some people who have done really well in the last 5 years here and who are in this phase 3. And they all talk about how much work it is on an ongoing basis. So the bad news is you're never going to be able to just kick back. You get to kick back when you go on vacation, and you earn that vacation by doing good work for the other 50 weeks a year. A lot of times I say, actors are notoriously undisciplined. They're not even in town for like 10, 12, 15 weeks a year. This is like in Los Angeles. I know actors who are just not around. They travel, they do this, they do that. And I'm like, tell me another career, another job you would have where you can be out of town 10, 12, 15 weeks a year and that you're still being paid well and being thought of highly at your job. So for me, I'm like 2 weeks a year where you get to go. And the other 48, 50 weeks, work, make this thing happen, study, become competent. So those are the 3 phases of what we call administration. So again, to recap, when you think about yourself as an actor and wanting to be an actor, number 1 is what is the skill you are selling as an actor? And I say you are storytelling professional. And you understand what story is being told, what's the style of that script? Is it a goofy sitcom? Is it a serious drama? Is it a horror film? They all have their styles, they have their rules. Are you competent in knowing those rules? Do you know how to read a script and go like, aha, this scene is where this happens and that's consistent with other stories like this? Do you know that stuff? So that's the acting part. Then there is administration, which has these 3 phases that I just covered. Phase 1, I just landed in LA. Holy shit, chaos, car, apartment, roommate, crazy relationships, bad habits, too much drinking, too much partying, too much wasting time. Do I need a class? Which class? Oh my God. And you find your way through that. Phase 3 is you've made your way through all that and you're now working as a professional. And that is administering your business, this storefront, storytelling professional, and now it's cooking. There's cash coming in the door, there's expenses, and you're making it as a business. Last thing that we cover in terms of how to look at yourself as an actor and what you're selling, and we put it under attitude. So we have acting, administration, and attitude. Actors are notoriously, as I said before, they can be narcissistic, they can be self-indulgent, they can be undisciplined, and none of these things serve you. None of them serve you. You must be a freaking professional from when you get up to when you go to sleep. And that means You do, in fact, get up at a reasonable hour. You go to work, whether that work is your own home office or you like to go to Starbucks or what have you and do your work. You are responsible. You do not lie. You do not gossip. You are not full of shit. You are not arrogant. You have confidence, but you're not an asshole. You have humility, but you're not some schmuck who's like, oh, I'm so worthless and weak and I can't do it, blah, 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 blah. But you are the person who you hope shows up at your door to fix your sink. When you have those people, when you find someone who comes and does a good job for you and has got a great attitude and they're like, hey, how are you, Mr. So-and-so? What can I do for you? Well, my sink, it's, no problem. I got that. And they're boom, 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 boom. When you meet these people in your life who do work for you, you're so like, you have that feeling of like, oh my God, I finally have an electrician. I love this guy. He shows up on time. He's got a good attitude. He does it, he's not a jerk. But a lot of actors think they can indulge really bad attitudinal habits that can range, you can be way too arrogant. You can be way too much of like, way too humble in a weak way. You have to be like competent and professional and present. And I said before, don't gossip. I mean, don't gossip. Show business is an incredibly gossipy, backstabbing business. And you haven't earned the right to do it yet. You might show up on a set where there's some highly professional, I won't say professional, highly paid, successful on that level person. And they're just the worst people. They are vain. They are self-interested. They cause problems on set. They run their diva routine. They gossip behind the back. They take down the director. They take down the DP. They take down their fellow actors. They take down the guest stars. They're, we call it commissary talk. They go to the commissary and it's yak, 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 all tearing people down. You want to be a hireable entity in this town? Don't be one of those people. So that last part of what we're talking about is attitude. Do you present yourself as a professional person? Show up on time. On time. And on time means early. Early is on time. On time is late. Late means fuck you. There's a story in my book of what my mentor, Milton Katselis, who started this school early on when in my 20s, I was starting to work with him, and I showed up at his house for a meeting and I was late because of the street cleaning and I couldn't find a parking place. I was like 6 minutes late. And he opened the door and I was like, he goes, you know what late means? I said, oh yeah, sorry, the street cleaning and the thing, and I couldn't find it. He goes, late means fuck you. And he slammed the door. And that was the end of the meeting. So that was a very early lesson for me on never being late for Milton. And from then on, I showed up at his house 20 minutes early and I just sat in the car and I made sure I was there. Be that person. On time. Good attitude. Do not indulge your bullshit. You wake up feeling depressed. There's a great movie, Broadcast News, from a number of years ago, where the lead character got up and by the clock, she cried. So when the alarm went off, she sobbed. And then when the alarm went off, she stopped crying and went to work. And I thought, what a great comedic sort of treatment of what everyone goes through, which is, hey, I'm going to indulge feeling like crap, feeling like it's never going to happen, feeling depressed about any number of things. And then I'm going to leave this door. I'm going to look good. I'm going to dress in something other than my worst clothes. And that means even when you go to class, there are times when we haven't done it recently, but maybe I will when we get back to it, where everyone just dresses up one night. Just wear your best stuff to class. If you look at pictures from the actor's studio in the 50s and 60s, they're all dressed up. Suits, ties, hats, everyone looks good. And there's nothing like actually dressing up and putting yourself on the line that way to sort of change your attitude. So acting, actors can notoriously indulge really bad attitudinal habits. And yet being a professional means that you don't let anyone in on how you're really feeling that day. Doesn't mean that you actually have to feel good. Maybe I don't want to be misunderstood. This is not about some Pollyanna, like, just be positive every day and think positive thoughts and read The Secret and you'll change your modality and your chakras and your spiritual alignment. And everyone can pursue whatever they want to in their private life that way to give them the best shot. But ultimately, you show up on set, you show up in class, you show up for a meeting, and no one knows that whatever crap you're dealing with, no one knows that you're dealing with it. No one. And that's being a professional. Then you leave that meeting, get in your car, cry all the way home. And probably a lot of actors do cry all the way home. That's fine. That's totally fine. But just attitudinally, you want to be a total pro. So there are people who really know how to act, but yet they don't know how to administrate their business. They don't even know there's a business that they're running. So you have these really, really talented people. You probably know some, or consider yourself to be someone who's like exceedingly talented as an actor. You put them on stage and they light it up. They leave the theater. They don't do shit for their career. Nothing. They don't pick up a phone. They don't write a note. They don't follow. They don't read the trades. They don't know anything that's going on in this business. And these people will be like, yeah, well, business is so shitty, man. My agent sucks and I can't go. You know, so you have someone who can act, they don't administer, and then they have a shitty attitude about it as well, where they're like, my agent sucks and this business is so, it's all. I can pretty much guarantee you that person won't get what it is they're hoping to get. You can have someone who is Mr. or Miss Eager Beaver administrator of their career. God, they're so diligent. They're in the library, they're at Starbucks, they're working 8 hours a day in their administration. They're reaching out to everyone that they know. They write letters, they get meetings, they do this. There's one problem. They don't know how to act. So they get into a room and they don't actually know what they're doing. And then you have people who maybe can do acting and they can do administration, but they have this attitudinal flaw. They indulge in their own crap, their own shit. And so they get these opportunities and they just mess it up in the room, or they even mess it up on set and they get fired because they got a bad attitude. Generally, if you want to be a pro, you've got all three areas of acting, attitude, and administration functioning. And then they all have to function at the same time for a number of years for you to hit that phase 3 of, I get paychecks from acting. I'm a professional actor. It's what I do. So that is sort of a preamble, you know, and in terms of how to look at this career and what you are doing. And there are those three areas: acting, how to act, how to administrate your career, so you build that network of people who will hire you, and then having a sane attitude. It doesn't mean that you are sane, because no one is totally sane. And at this moment, we're all going totally cuckoo, right? I mean, we're a month now into lockdown, and we're all starting to like bounce off walls, right? So no one is particularly sane at this moment. I mean, I know for myself, it's like up and down during the day, you know, like I'm like counting the hours till 5 o'clock, because at 5 o'clock I can have a glass of wine before dinner. I'm just like, is it 5 yet? Is it 5? So at this particular moment, no one feels sane. But the fact is, at some point in the next month or two, this is going to loosen up. We're going to be able to function again, and then you still have to stay sane. Before coronavirus, actors were not known for their sanity and for their sterling attitudes. So you got to have all three working and all at the same time. So I know the chat has been active, and I've been trying to focus on looking ahead and delivering what I wanted to say. Cameron, do you have any? I'll unmute my friend Cameron. Is there any questions that have come in that you think are worthy of taking up?
Yes, the first one goes to what you were talking about, suiting your acting to the script. Yeah. And the question is regarding overacting, or if you get a note to tone it down. Yep. How do you monitor how much you're giving? How do you self-monitor yourself in terms of how much to do?
Yeah, I would say it's largely experience-based. It goes to what I was saying in terms of what show are you going in for? I think a professional actor, part of that 40 hours a week that you should be putting in on your career, is to watch every TV show at least once, so you know what's going on, so you know the style of the thing, because a lot of TV shows have styles. Generally, it starts from the showrunner down. The person who created the show may have a very specific voice. You know, someone like Aaron Sorkin or David Milch or Sherman Palladino with Mrs. Maisel. If you watch that show, it's a wonderful show. There's a very specific rhythm to the way she writes, and it's very, very present in that show. To watch cop show naturalism all over the place and see what the style is. Once you start looking at all these shows, you'll identify a style that marks that show, and you'll start to go like, oh, I know, this is cop show procedural acting. Cop show procedural acting is generally pretty minimal and natural. And when you're going in for something more wild, stuff that's on everyone wants to work for Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple Plus, these sort of the things that have come up in the last 5-6 years in terms of generating alternative content. You'll notice everyone wants to work there. Everyone wants their deal over there because they can do more with the stories. They're more vivid. The acting is more vivid. The stories are darker and more imaginative than network TV. So you'll know if you're going in for a Netflix show like Ozark, which I love, those characters are exceedingly vivid. The people around the town, they're all very vivid. There's a fair amount of acting going on. Very different from if you're going in for CSI Detroit or whatever the next CSI will be, where the style is more minimal. So it's an experiential thing. You will learn over time how to place your shot. What I said, not every tennis shot is the same. Sometimes you're just hitting the ball back and waiting for your moment. And acting can be the same. So they're not wrong for saying, listen, do less. It can be dangerous in LA. I talk about it because it's such relentless feedback that the actor becomes afraid of making a choice at all. They're afraid of making any choice. So they go in just like, I'm just going to be the most neutral person in the world. I'm not even going to exist. And actors will have the feeling like they do the audition, they get in their car, they drive home, they're like, did it even happen? I don't even remember that it happened. So that's a natural phase that you go through of like, I can't figure out what shot to hit. And the only way through that is, in my opinion, good training, where you work yourself through a lot of different kinds of scripts. And we do sometimes people bring in TV stuff to the school here or movie stuff. We don't just do plays, so that you understand the style and how to deal with that style. So they're not wrong for the feedback. Don't resent feedback. When you're in that audition, part of what you're selling, frankly, is someone who is compliant and can take a note and not get defensive about it. So if they're like, whoa, hey, too big, do it again, take all that out. You say, yeah, no problem. And then you try to do your best to do that. But you don't want that to lead to what I consider sort of almost a cult-like fear of choices, because we all got into no one got into this. Look, we all want to make money from acting, right? But no one got into it. The thing that inspired them is not Law and Order. Law and Order didn't inspire you as an actor. Who inspired you as an actor? Brando, De Niro, Streep, Blanchett, Daniel Day-Lewis, people who do, these are not people who are known for fear. These are not people who are known for timidity, but they worked their way into a position where they had the roles to do the things that they had the talent to do. So that would be my answer to that is it's experience-based. Do 50 auditions, get 50 auditions. And then you'll know that much more about how to do auditions. But again, using an athletic metaphor, if you're a baseball player, a lot of actors are like this, batting practice, right? The baseball player swings the bat, single pitch, and they go, okay, how was I? Was it good? Am I like a power hitter? Am I a utility man? Tell me about my hitting. And should I do this? And you're like, whoa, swing that thing like 100 more times in the next 2 hours. I'll tell you a little bit more about who you are as a baseball player and how you hit. But actors will be like, I got it at the audition. Did I get it? Was I good? Am I talented? Am I going to work? And they'll take that, no, not today. And they'll, oh my God, I'm never going to make it in this business. I had an audition. I didn't book it. They'll drive themselves nuts. So it's experience-based. When you get to 50, and I'm not talking commercials, 50 theatrical auditions, you will know more. Do 50 scenes in any class, you will know more. But because acting has a scarcity to it in terms of these opportunities, sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes you'll have actors that haven't had an audition all year. They start to go crazy. It's what I talked about earlier. They'll go into that audition and do 5 months of acting just because they finally let loose. They're off the chain. The handcuffs are off. And then they'll get that note. Yeah, stop doing all that. They'll cave. So it's part of the experience. It's part of getting into the batter's box, seeing a pitch and whiffing, missing. The bat doesn't even like, whoa. You're like, okay, that's a professional pitch. Holy shit. Well, with time and with practice, you'll be able to see those pitches, you'll hit them. And that's the same with auditions. What else, Cameron?
Yes, there's some more practical questions. Someone specifically wanted to ask you, is it useful to do background work, to do extra work? I guess more
I think it's
starting out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's useful just because I think it's useful of two things. One, if it still exists, it is a way of becoming SAG. I don't know if that's, I'll confess, it's been many years since I was chasing acting professionally and 25 years since I became SAG. So um, there used to be, and I think there still is, a means of a certain number of background jobs
Yes.
on a union set will get you admission into the union. So it's good for that. But I also think it's good to observe what is happening on a set. So if you're going to be a background player, you just want to use that opportunity intelligently, which is watch what's going on, watch the dynamics. If you can, sometimes you're kept far away, but if you're charmingly aggressive and say, hey, listen, is it okay if I just hang out over here and watch? I just would love to watch. Sometimes the answer will be yes, sometimes the answer will be no. But if you're charmingly aggressive, and you will get yourself a little bit closer to the action. You will see the dynamics between DPs, writers, directors, and actors. And all of that is very good education, so that when you get on the set and you're not a background player, you'll know better how the dynamics work so that you know how to behave. So, and it pays whatever it pays. So I have nothing against being a background player early on. And then at some point, you'll know I'm not going to do this anymore, and you'll know it. You'll have done a number of them, and you'll say, you know what, I either love it, I don't love it. Some people really love doing that work, and it pays, and they've got 100 of those credits doing background stuff. Some people do it 5 or 6 times. They go, I have done that, and frankly, it sucks my soul a little bit, because there is that aspect to it. There's the old line, I'm a classical musician. I was trained as a classical musician. What's the farthest distance in the world? It's from the front row of Carnegie Hall onto the stage. That's the longest distance in the world. Sometimes as a background player, the longest distance in the world seems to be the 50 feet between where you're being held and where the stars that distance, that 50 feet, which seems like you'll never get there, can seem soul-sucking. And so you'll find out for yourself. If you get there and you do 5 or 6 of those jobs and you've got your SAG vouchers, you might decide you don't want to do it anymore.
Do you have time for more? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Someone was asking, in terms of ideally you're spending 40 hours a week, building your business, and they were saying, what's the best way to spend your time during those hours? And then a related question was, someone was like, what's the best way to reach out to casting directors?
Yeah, I would say the best way is I think time is best when it's allocated quite specifically. So I would say, okay, let's take this 40 hours. That's our ideal. I don't know, maybe 10 of that is reading scripts. I would read, just type into Google, the 100 greatest American plays. And you'll come up with, there'll be 10 different lists of the 100 greatest plays, and 50 of those plays will show up on every list. Read those 50. Then type in, what are the 100 best movies made in the last 50 years or whatever, 100 years, the whole time, whatever you want. And 50 of those movies will be on every list. Watch all 50. And then sometimes you can watch and download the screenplay and watch the film while reading the screenplay, and you'll see how the screenplay differs from the movie, how in the screenplay it says a certain thing, but they did something else. This is the study aspect of you need to be proficient in the history of this business and what happened. And what did Brando represent when he came out in the 50s and 60s? What did that represent? What changed in acting? You look at acting in the 30s and 40s, it's different. What changed? What were the filmmakers in the 70s, and how did they change everything? Why are the 70s considered this golden decade of movie making? You should know the answers to those questions. You should know what different writers and directors have been working. So I would say a fair amount of the 40 hours can be spent becoming knowledgeable and proficient, so you can actually have an intelligent conversation with someone you may meet where you know these movies. But it's astonishing. I mean astonishing how many actors don't know any fucking thing about what I'm talking about. They know what they like on TV in the last 5 years. And you mentioned playwrights, screenwriters, directors, famous movies. I mean, famous movies. And they haven't watched them. They don't know them. They don't know who Montgomery Clift is or what he represented. They don't know Brando's films, and I think it's incredibly lazy. And again, apply that same ethic to any other field. You want to become a professional musician? Tell me the professional musician that doesn't, I've never really listened to the Beethoven symphonies. It's not my thing. Listen, listen, and learn. So that would be how I would break down some of it to that. I would break down some of it towards, if you're in a class and you should be in one, diligent work on the materials of that class. Any good class probably has some textbook associated with it written by the teacher, or a book that the teacher recommends if they didn't write one. Read those books. Hopefully the class is challenging and asks you to do work on your own, whether it's reading scripts or rehearsing stuff. So there's that work. And then another section would be the pure admin section, where I'd be like, okay, who are the casting directors in town? I have no idea who's working in town. And you figure out who's working in town, who's in the casting director. You can read Deadline, you can read Hollywood Reporter and Variety to the degree that they still, they're online, and the print editions, everything is changing in that with print journalism in general. But there's a lot to be investigated about what is happening in the business now, what movies are being made and who's making them. Who are your favorite people? Make a list of your favorite people, favorite actors, favorite writers, favorite directors. You should have a list of at least 10 to 20 in each category, where you go like, okay, here are my favorites. Whenever this director does something, I want to see what he or she did. Mm-hmm. Make sure you know what all of those people are doing. Are they in production on anything? So that would be how I'd break it down.
Great. Someone had asked specifically about our classes. He said, I assume because it's scene study that you only do plays, or do you do film and TV scenes? And if so, do you address those scenes differently in your critiques than you would a scene from a play?
Yes and yes. We're primarily, at the Playhouse, we emphasize theater, but we emphasize theater for a simple reason. And it has to do with a simple algebra problem. You've got a story, and a story takes, let's call it 2 hours. In a movie, how many scenes are in that 2 hours? 50 to 60. So how much is the plot moving in any of those scenes? It's very incremental. A scene in a movie can be a guy leaving his apartment, getting in the car and driving off. And then the next scene is him in the car having a conversation. And then the next scene is him getting out of his car and going to work. And the next scene is him saying hi to the receptionist and going into his office. And then the next, they can build stories incrementally, scene by scene, act by act, leading towards one scene that may be excessively confrontational where everything is resolved. But anyway, you've got 2 hours divided by anywhere between 40 and 60 scenes. What is happening per scene is generally minimal. Take the same 2 hours and ask a play, how many scenes are in it? 4 to 8 for most plays. I mean, there are some plays that are vignette-ish plays where you have 20 different scenes. But most are like 4 to 8 scenes in that 2 hours. What is happening per scene? A lot more. In a play, you will know the conflict within 5 minutes of the play starting. The first scene will have conflict. Every scene will have conflict. Every scene will have some bit of news being delivered that advances the story, changes the characters. And so we're doing that. We emphasize theater not from a snob point of view of like, well, theater is such a higher art form, and film and TV are really just, it's not about that. It's about how much is the acting can you do per scene. So when you do theater, generally the writing is thicker, there's more going on, there's more to act, there's more to analyze, and there's more to do. So that's why we emphasize it, is that it's better for training. I'll joke that if you're going to be a boxer, you wouldn't train with the weakest guy in the gym. And you go like, well, I'm just going to do this TV script. It's a piece of cake. It's a piece of fluff. It's from my favorite sitcom, and I'm going to do that in class. That's like getting in the ring with the weakest guy there and just clobbering him, just annihilating him. And you go, see how good I am as a boxer? I'm going to go and just nail these guys. You train against people who are going to push you, challenge you, push you to your limits, and playwrights will generally do that. But that being said, yeah, people bring in film, and there are great screenplays to act, and there are great TV shows to act. We will often assign people to do, there's an actress who did very well here, who for a while, she did a Sorkin thing and it didn't go so well. She didn't quite understand the rhythm and the pacing and how it moves. So I said, listen, just bring in, at the end of the night, you don't even have to schedule it, bring in some sides from a Sorkin thing, any of his shows, and we'll just run it essentially unrehearsed, just so you can start to feel the rhythm of how Sorkin builds dialogue and builds a scene which is very specific, and it's a style that is very popular. Sherman Palladino is another example of that. Very fast-paced, witty, intelligent dialogue. That's a skill, and it's a skill to be able to memorize it and do it and deliver it in a very easy, natural, funny way. So yeah, we take all comers in terms of content, with a preference for theater because the writing is thicker. In terms of, do I critique it differently? I critique everything the same, which is, what is this story? What is the style of this story? What is this writer about? And can we make that sing to give you maximum advantage should you get the audition for this material tomorrow? So that is always my angle on a critique, which is, how do we sell this particular story and get you to understand this story? It's being told again and again. You know, there's the old saw, there's only 7 stories, they're just being told in a million different ways. So once you understand the design of a scene, the structure of a scene, the flavor of certain writing through doing it in class, you'll start to be able to pick up sides for an audition. Even if you don't know the whole script, you don't have it, and you go, oh, it's that thing. It feels like this. And you go in, you're gonna be able to act it better. So yes, we do film and TV, but it's all critique from the standpoint of, how do we make that particular scene work? What choices do you make to make it work? Mm-hmm. Next.
I guess expanding on that, someone is just asking, what is it like to be a student here? How does the curriculum work? Just the basics of class.
Yeah, well, the Beverly Hills Playhouse is, as I said, it's a scene study outfit. It's a masterclass format, which means the teaching is done through your performance of a scene that you have rehearsed outside class, memorized, all of it, and then you bring it in and you perform it, and then the teachers critique it. And it's in that critique that then we open up all 3 of these areas of the teaching: and acting, attitude, and administration. So that's the basic format, is a masterclass format. You will be rehearsing these scenes outside class and trying to bring in as finished and as polished a piece of work as you know how to bring. There are a lot of classes where that is not the demand level. You just read the scenes with paper in hand, and you might work on the same scene in class weeks on end. And we've just found that that doesn't put enough responsibility on the students to work outside of the class and to think and be thoughtful. And is this a real character? And if it's a real character that's different from you, what did you do to build it? What research did you do? How did you learn the script? Is it memorized? All these skills that you have to be a professional. Basically, Milton's design, the guy who founded the school, was, let's train the actors to do what it is they're going to be hired to do. And when you're early on in your career, you're going to be hired to do a scene. And the more successful you are, the more scenes you have. If you're the lead, you're in every scene. So we base the training very much on, do what it is you will be doing and getting paid for. Except here, we're training you how to do it. So it's not exercise heavy. We have a few exercises, but they're very down to earth. They're not theoretical. They're not head trips. It's very much performance based. Rehearse the scene, get with your scene partner, make that work, learn how to collaborate, bring it into class, bring us the best you've got. Memorized, off book, a basic set. Show us how you would do this, and then we will help you do it better. The classes are twice a week, usually a Monday or Wednesday, or Monday or Thursday, or Tuesday or Wednesday. There's different schedules. And we teach at 3 different levels: orientation for people who are just starting out, intermediate, and advanced. But all those classes have the exact same structure that I just told you. So if you're new to acting and you came to the school and a scene, I've never done this before in my life, you're going to be doing it. That's the first thing you're going to be doing, is getting up there, memorizing scene, doing it. And so that's how it works.
More? Can you do more?
Sure.
Yeah. This was
Go for another 15 minutes, and then
oh, cool.
We'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Or if we run out, that's fine.
A real practical question someone had said, asked, do you need both a comedy and a drama reel separately? Do you need one of each?
Yeah, the reel is becoming an anachronistic term. It's almost like clips. Everyone wants a clip. So very, very rare, I would say rarely now, honestly, do you need to put together what people used to do even 10 years ago, which is 3 to 5 minutes of you in various scenes. On your website or on any number of the sites that help actors administrate, there might be a place for that 3 to 4 minutes. But unfortunately, and I say it's unfortunate, people don't have the patience for 3 to fucking 4 minutes of watching somebody. They want clips. So I think those clips should have aspects of your casting there, and casting is something we can talk about another time in terms of what parts are you good for. But yeah, I think it would be useful to have a dramatic scene, a comedic scene. If you're someone who could play every doctor on TV, you should have a scene where you're playing a doctor. If you have a professorial look, have one that is suitable to that. And I think variety there serves you. But just start, I would think less about my reel as a 3 to 4 minute montage of my talent, and get very specific about, I've got 4 clips, 45 to 90 seconds each, and they each show off a certain thing. But as you go, you'll do student films, you'll have stuff, and there might be a fantastic scene. It's not specific to your casting, but it's a great scene. You'll put that on as well. More?
Yeah, this question, I guess, is more about attitude and being a professional. And if you're having a bad day, you don't let anyone know, and that kind of thing. And I hope I'm going to just read what she said, this person said. Is it not isn't communication important? Like if you're not feeling well, and you need space to focus on what you're doing, I guess they're asking, shouldn't you communicate that to the director or the person on set so that you don't get into a conflict or something?
I think it's dicey. I mean, if your electrician showed up and said, I need a few minutes just to get myself together, I'm not feeling well, do you give a shit? You don't give a shit. It's irritating. So I frankly would say, get your shit together before you go to set. And when you're on set, behave like a pro. And whatever's going on with you, you have got to suppress it. And then get in your car and cry on the way home. But when you are on set, you should be someone that they want to have back. Now, are there professional situations that come up and you need to address them? Yeah. If something happened in the dressing room, if the DP was an asshole, if something inappropriate happened that you feel needs to be reported from a behavioral standpoint, of something unprofessional happening on set, something unethical, yes, then you would go to the producer and say, I'm having an issue, this person is being blah, 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 blah. But that's very different from, I myself am not feeling good today and I think I need some time to blah, blah, blah. I would honestly stay away from it. No one is interested. If they say, oh my God, yes, tell us, they are acting in that moment. They are acting their concern. And why are they acting it? They need to get the fucking shot. So they're going to have a conversation with you if they think it will help you act, but they're not going to appreciate it in the end. They will leave set, go home and say, yeah, I had this actress and it took 10 to 15 minutes to get her head straight so we could get the shot, but we did it and blah, 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 and you won't be hired again. You won't know that you're not being hired again, but you'll go on the shit list. Right. I want to address a question, Cameron, that I saw come in. Just, it was scanning by, which is that someone asked about rehearsing scenes as part of training. And whether that's a valid part of training, because when you're hired professionally, you generally will not have the ability to rehearse. And that's true for TV. For co-stars and even guest stars, the rehearsal will be limited. But rehearsal is just a process of going from zero to polished performance. And you want to be good at that, even if when you go on set, there is a rehearsal. The process is you going from zero to being able to competently perform the scene. And just because class drills that process and you do it on your own outside of class, and you don't do it professionally, you are doing it professionally. It's just happening in possibly a very short time frame, but that process still happens. And if you develop a system for yourself of how to go from zero to accomplished and proficient with a scene, which includes communication with the scene partner and agreements, and sometimes not, sometimes you don't have the time, you drill that process, you will show up on set and you'll know what to do when they say, listen, we're going right now. Glad you're here, get in the makeup, we're shooting now. That you will have built in a process for yourself that you won't feel freaked out and you'll know what to do. So it goes to training on the habits that will serve you professionally. Just because most professional film and TV sets don't have a lot of rehearsal in terms of, let's explore, there's going to be a camera blocking rehearsal. Just because it's not, oh, let's explore, doesn't mean that doing that as part of your training is invalid. Take one or two more.
Someone was asking how often we perform our scenes in classes here at the Playhouse. How often do you put up a scene generally?
There's two ways of answering that. There's the how many times will I go up per month in a class? There's that part of it,
Right.
which is a good average would be 2 to 4 times a month. And you think, what? There are these other classes where I go up every single night. And I'd say the more that is the case, the lower the quality goes. The more scenes are being done, the lower the quality is. So we really have, again, an ethic of bring us in a 10-minute piece of theater or film or whatever, bring us in a performance that you've thought about and rehearsed and invested in. And so we train you in that level of investment. And because of that, 2 to 3 a month would be a good average. But the fact is there'll be months where you're like, oh, I got 6 scenes this month, I'm going crazy. And there'll be another month where all your scene partners went out of town and you've got 3, 2. So it varies up and down. But if you're going to do an average over a year of someone who's really effective in the class, I would say 2 to 3 scenes a month is a good average. The other way of answering that question, depending on how it's being asked, how many times on any specific scene will I have to perform it? Right. Between 1 and 3 times. If you do the scene and it's terrific and it's just like hot shit, and I think it's a successful thing, we might leave it there and say, this is excellent. Move on and do X, Y, or Z. A lot of scenes will come in and I'll say like, pretty good. It needs da 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 da. So bring it back next week or whenever you guys are available and we'll finish it off. And that can happen up to 3 times. So any given scene you'll perform anywhere between 1 and 3 times, but it's not set. It's not like every scene that happens, they bring in a draft and you get notes and then you bring it back and then you get notes and then you bring it again. It's not formulaic that way. It's very much like, were we dazzled? If we were dazzled, we might move on.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Someone is asking about advice. They have a manager and they're looking for an agent, and they said, how do we do this right now, or do we do it right now in the middle of a pandemic? Do you send a cover and letter and resume? What's the best way to send your materials? Do you email them directly? I guess so. It's what's the best way to do it, and do you do it now? Yeah.
This is a tricky moment. We people ask that in the in-class sessions as well. I would just be cautious about approaching any communication from a standpoint of personal ambition at this moment. Now, there are things going on professionally. There are legit things that people have put out calls for, make your short film about being under house arrest. Show us your reel about, because they're stuck at home and their job is to meet new people. There are, I would say, people who are really in a positive way saying, hey, show me your stuff. I'm interested in seeing your stuff. And then there's the actor saying, hey, I'm stuck at home. Here's a chance for my career admin. I'm going to write so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. It can, because this is a very difficult time and a lot of people are going through significant trauma, either dealing specifically with the illness, a family member with the illness, their business has been shut down, their income is less, there's a lot of anxiety, and I would treat all communication with care. And so if it's someone that that you're reaching out to in the business, I would make the theme of that communication, I'm reaching out because I thought of you, and It's a crazy time, and I just want to see if you're doing well and you're safe and the family is safe, and I can't wait for the business to start up again. I would stay away from, hi, I'm Sally Smith and I'm an actress and I think you should represent me here on The Break. It's just dicey. And it goes to the long-term thing of etiquette and professionalism, that you want to communicate with care. You want to communicate from a sense of, I have interest in you. And actors, it's tricky. Actors can be like, I want you to be interested in me. And almost all communication in the business has that subtext. I want you to be interested in me. I want you to hire me. So you have to know that subtext exists throughout all communication happening within this business is, I'd love to work with you together, blah, 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 blah. And then layer that with concern. At this moment, concern, how are you? I hope all's well. This is for people that you know. If it's someone you don't know, I wouldn't be reaching out unless they've asked for it. Let's do one more and then we can wrap it up.
Very practical question just about self-taping. Should you send in 2 different takes, or should you just send your best take, I guess, the question.
For self-taping?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I don't know if I have an answer for that. When you send in 2, there's the subtextual communication. I don't know which is best. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to send in 2, I think it should be 2 different performances, vivid. Like I didn't know what you wanted. So I did one that was a little bit like over the top because I think it might have that comedic feel to it. But I also did another one that was totally close to the vest, low key, sardonic, dry humor. Specifically because I don't know. And then I think that would be appreciated. I think what is not appreciated is, here's 3, I don't know what's best. Because that can communicate insecurity and can feel unprofessional. And it's also like, hey man, I'm not here to look at 10 minutes of your footage because you can't decide what's best. It can come off a little bit negative that way. So if the performances are essentially the same, pick one, send it. If it's legitimately, I don't know how this scene could go. I played one where it's really angry and one where I covered it and it's underneath, that would be valid. But 2 max, because I know for me, it can get a little bit like, can you look at, 20 minutes and figure out which you like the best? And I'm sort of like, you tell me what you like the best and I'll tell you what I think.
Right.
All right. We've done, what were you going to say, Cameron? Was there one more?
Oh, do you have time for one more or no?
Sure.
Just one more.
Going on, right?
Someone
I'm
was
so
just
busy.
Someone's just asking.
Take out the trash. Yeah.
Right. What would you say, excuse me, are the best, most well-acted films of the last 2 years? Some good films that you think
Oh gosh,
are
that's too big a question. It's like my kids. What's your favorite movie ever?
Oh.
There's too much, and also we're in what they're calling the golden age of television.
Yes, true.
With so many wonderful series that go on, with 3 or 4 seasons of amazing stuff. And you want to go back to The Wire? Do you want to go look at Ozark, which I think is terrific? Do you want to look at Maisel? Do you want to, this film, that film? It's way too broad a question. There's a lot of really, really great work happening. Mm-hmm. I think with Netflix and Amazon and Apple, this has been great for the overall business in terms of creating different kinds of content and longer form content. The idea of taking a story and diving into it for 10 hours, it's like a 10-hour movie just broken up. Mm-hmm. I think is really interesting and yields wonderful writing, wonderful performances, excellent direction. And it's just, there's so much great stuff that it would be hard to narrow down and say, this movie, just the best thing ever. The last movie that I screened for the classes, which was a couple of years ago, I should probably do it again, was a German movie called The Lives of Others, which I think is one of the best movies of the last, you want one? There's one. The Lives of Others, I think, is one of the best movies in the last 20 years. Script, excellent. What they're talking about in terms of what happened in East Germany, performances, impact. So you want one, I'll give you that one.
Great.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here because I don't want to, again, we're so busy, right? And I don't want to overload and tax people's time. I like to be efficient with people's time. This is not the only time we'll be doing this. We may do this every week where I might zero in more on a specific topic like script analysis or a specific aspect of administration or a specific part of the actor's life. If you're interested, this is not why we're doing it, but people will ask. My book is called The Oasis of Insanity, and it's on Amazon. You can pick it up. A lot of what I talk about, I've written about in that book. But we might do this each week where I zoom in on a more laser-focused topic than how do you pursue acting, which is gigantic, right? I just wanted to sort of set a frame and give some context to what that journey is. So hopefully we'll have more and you will be invited. If you have, we didn't get to answer every question that came in. The chat is like zooming by, and as it goes by, I'm like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You can, I will give you my email address and you can ask me questions. Any old question you want, I will ask, I will answer. And that email address is abarton, A-B-A-R-T-O-N as in Nancy, abarton at bhplayhouse.com. abarton at bhplayhouse.com. If there was a question that you had that didn't get answered here, you can email me and I'll be happy to answer your questions that way, since we are all so busy. I will end off by saying this is a very strange moment. You know, society hasn't been through this in 100 years. So it's new to just about all, but you know, who was around for the 1918 pandemic, God bless them for still being here. We're gonna get past it. It's a moment. There's a lot of pent up demand. There's a lot of pent up energy. And when they start loosening the grip, which will be happening depending on where you live, could happen as soon as next week. If you're in LA, next month, it will start loosening up and things are going to happen again. The people I know in the business are saying the writers are writing, the producers are producing, they are lining up content. They are ready to come out of this gate real fast with stuff. So fear not, stay safe, stay sane, read, go for walks, do what you can do. But we're in my unofficial, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an epidemiologist. We are more than halfway through this, and I think it will pick up fairly quickly. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. We'll do more of these. Again, email if you have any questions. And again, stay safe, stay sane. There's a lot you can do on your acting career, even though you can't act a lot right now. There's a lot about administration, and there's a lot about attitude and thinking and researching and reading and watching great stuff that you can do that will make you a more valuable person on the other side of this, even if you can't train specifically and get on stage and act and pursue it the way you normally pursue it. So hang in there, and all the best. Thank you so much for joining us.